The moment Ethan Brooks signed hello to the forgotten little girl in the corner, he had no idea he was about to dismantle every wall Claire Monroe had spent 7 years building. But here's what nobody tells you about walls. They don't just keep the world out. They keep you trapped inside. And tonight, at the most unlikely place imaginable, two broken families would collide in a way that would change everything. Stay with me until the end of this story, hit that like button, and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this journey travels. Because what happens next, you won't see it coming. The Sterling Corporation's annual Christmas dinner was the kind of event that existed solely for appearances. Crystal chandeliers dripped light across tables draped in ivory linen. A jazz quartet played standards nobody actually listened to. Executives in tailored suits clustered near the bar, their laughter calculated and hollow. Spouses smiled through conversations about vacation homes and stock portfolios, their eyes already glazing over with expensive wine and practiced boredom. Claire Monroe stood just inside the ballroom entrance, her hand wrapped protectively around her daughter's smaller one, and wondered, not for the first time that evening, if she'd made a catastrophic mistake. "We don't have to stay long," she murmured, though Nina couldn't hear her. The words were more for Claire's own comfort anyway, a small ritual of reassurance she'd developed over the years. She squeezed Nina's hand twice, their private signal for "I'm here, you're safe," and felt the answering squeeze that meant "I know, Mama." Nina was 7 years old with her mother's dark curls and her father's gray eyes, though Claire tried not to think about that particular genetic contribution. The little girl wore a deep green velvet dress that Claire had agonized over for 3 days, wanting something special, but not so fancy that Nina would feel uncomfortable. A small silver butterfly clip held back one side of her hair. To anyone who bothered to look, and Claire knew from experience that very few people would, Nina was beautiful. But beauty had never been the problem. Claire had spent the entire afternoon mentally preparing for this evening, running through scenarios, building contingency plans. The babysitter canceling at 4 o'clock had demolished every careful arrangement. For 3 frantic hours, Claire had cycled through her entire contact list. Other sitters, neighbors, that teenager down the street who'd helped once before. Nothing. Everyone was either traveling for the holidays or already committed. She could have skipped the dinner entirely. Should have, probably. But Douglas Reeves, the VP of Operations and her direct supervisor, had made it crystal clear that attendance wasn't optional. "It's about visibility, Claire," he'd said during their last one-on-one, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "The executive team needs to see you as part of the larger culture here. Team player, one of us." The subtext had been obvious: show up or stall out. After 6 years of clawing her way up from a junior analyst position, after countless nights of studying for certifications while Nina slept, after every sacrifice and calculated risk, Claire wasn't about to let a babysitter crisis derail her career trajectory. So here they were. "Okay, baby," Claire signed, crouching down to Nina's eye level. "Remember what we talked about. Mama has to say hello to some people from work. You can sit at our table and use your tablet, okay? I'll check on you every few minutes." Nina's face, so open and trusting, tightened slightly. Her small hands moved in practiced shapes. "Will other kids be here?" Claire's heart twisted. "I don't think so, sweetie. This is a grown-up dinner." "Then I'll be good. I'll be quiet." Nina's signs were precise, careful. The signs of a child who'd learned early that being accommodating made life easier for everyone around her. "You're always good," Claire signed back, fighting the familiar surge of guilt and fury that seemed to define her entire existence these days. Guilt that she'd brought Nina into this situation, fury at a world that couldn't be bothered to meet her daughter halfway. They made their way into the ballroom proper. Claire felt the weight of glances sliding over them, cataloging and dismissing. She'd worn her most professional dress, a sleek navy sheath that said competent without trying too hard, and heels that made her calves ache. Her makeup was flawless, her hair smooth. She looked like she belonged here, like someone who had it all together, the performance of her life. Their assigned table was mercifully toward the edge of the room, not quite relegated to Siberia, but definitely not in the inner circle. Claire recognized a few faces. Martin from logistics, Priya from marketing, some guy from the legal department whose name she could never remember. They nodded politely as Claire helped Nina into a chair and settled her with the tablet. "Didn't know you had a daughter," Martin said, his tone friendly enough, but his eyes already drifting away, scanning for more important connections. She's 7, Claire replied, voice pleasant and neutral. She didn't add the rest of it, didn't explain why Nina had never appeared at any company event before, didn't mention the deaf part. That conversation never went well. People either became awkwardly over-solicitous or treated Nina like she was somehow less than, a problem to be managed rather than a person to be known. Better to just let it be. The dinner progressed with agonizing slowness. Salads arrived, picked at, removed. The main course was some kind of chicken in an overly complicated sauce that tasted like it had been prepared 3 days ago and reheated. Claire ate mechanically, hyper-aware of Nina beside her, the little girl's eyes fixed on her tablet screen, fingers swiping through a digital book. Across the table, Priya was deep in conversation with Martin about some upcoming marketing initiative. The legal department guy was on his phone, not even pretending to engage. The seats to Claire's left remained empty, 2 no-shows apparently, which suited her fine. And of course, the Hutchinson account is going to require complete restructuring, someone was saying at the next table over. Claire recognized the voice, Douglas Reeves himself, holding court as usual. We're talking full implementation by Q2, which means operations is going to be critical to the timeline. Claire's attention sharpened. This was the kind of conversation she needed to be part of, the kind of visibility Douglas had been talking about. But how could she network her way into that discussion with Nina, sitting right beside her? She glanced at her daughter. Nina had shifted slightly, her shoulder hunched in that particular way that meant she was trying to make herself smaller, less noticeable. The guilt twisted deeper. 10 more minutes, Claire told herself. Then we can leave. I'll have made an appearance, shown my face. That'll have to be enough. She was mentally calculating the earliest socially acceptable departure time when the empty chair to her left suddenly had an occupant. Sorry I'm late, a quiet voice said. Got caught in traffic. Claire looked up and found herself meeting the eyes of a man she vaguely recognized from around the office. Someone from accounting, maybe? He was probably in his early 30s with sandy hair that looked like it couldn't quite decide whether to curl or stay straight, and the kind of genuinely apologetic expression that suggested he meant it about the traffic. No problem, Claire said automatically, already turning her attention back to her plate. But then the man did something unexpected. He looked at Nina. Really looked. Not the sliding glance in a way that most people defaulted to, but a genuine moment of attention. And then his hands moved. Hi, he signed, the gesture fluid and natural. I'm Ethan. What's your name? The world stopped. Claire actually felt her breath catch, her entire body going still with shock. Nina's head snapped up from her tablet, her eyes wide with surprise that quickly transformed into something Claire rarely saw on her daughter's face, pure, uncomplicated delight. Nina, her daughter signed back, her movements suddenly animated, alive in a way that made Claire's chest ache. You know sign language? I do, Ethan signed, his smile reaching his eyes in a way that most adult smiles didn't. My sister is deaf. I've been signing since I was little. Nina's whole face lit up like Christmas morning. Really? You have a deaf sister? I do. Her name is Rachel. She's all grown up now. She's a teacher. A teacher? Nina bounced slightly in her chair, forgetting entirely about being small and quiet. What does she teach? Kindergarten. Lots of very noisy 5-year-olds. Ethan's signs included the kind of exaggerated expressions that made signs come alive. The facial grammar that hearing people often forgot was just as important as the hand shapes. Nina giggled, an actual sound, rare and precious. Claire sat frozen, watching this impossible interaction unfold. Ethan glanced at Claire then, his expression shifting to something more cautious, seeking permission. I hope that's okay, he said aloud, his voice soft. I didn't mean to intrude. No, Claire managed, her voice coming out rougher than intended. She cleared her throat. No, that's fine. Thank you. I'm Ethan Brooks, he said, extending his hand. Accounting department. I think we've passed each other in the hallways a few times. Claire Monroe, operations. She shook his hand, still trying to process what was happening. This is Nina, my daughter. She's wonderful, Ethan said simply, and the way he said it, casual, matter of fact, like it was the most obvious thing in the world, made something crack in Claire's carefully maintained composure. Mama! Nina was signing urgently, her hands moving so fast Claire almost missed it. He knows signs. He can talk to me. I see that, baby, Claire signed back, then added aloud to Ethan, she's not used to meeting people who sign. No? Ethan's eyebrows rose. But she's so fluent. We sign at home, just the two of us. Claire heard the defensive edge creeping into her tone and tried to soften it. Most people don't know ASL. That's their loss, Ethan said, and turned back to Nina. What are you reading? Nina showed him the tablet screen enthusiastically, launching into an explanation about the story, something about a girl who could talk to animals. Ethan listened with genuine attention, asking questions, his signs keeping pace with Nina's excited responses. Claire sat back slowly, her untouched chicken cooling on her plate, and watched. Just watched. Because she couldn't remember the last time she'd seen Nina interact with another adult like this. Without the hesitation, without the awareness that she was different, without the weight of knowing that communication was always going to be work. Is it okay if I join you guys? A new voice interrupted her thoughts. Claire looked up to find a boy of maybe 9 or 10 standing beside Ethan's chair, holding a plate of desserts that looked suspiciously like he'd collected one of everything from the buffet. Caleb! Ethan signed and spoke simultaneously. I thought you were getting one brownie. I got one, the boy said cheerfully, and one cookie, and one slice of cake, and one... That's 4 desserts. 4 ones. Still technically one of each. Caleb grinned, completely unrepentant, then noticed Nina. Oh, hi! Nina shrank back slightly, the familiar wariness returning. This is Nina, Ethan said, still in that easy dual communication mode that seemed effortless for him. Nina, this is my son, Caleb. And yes, before you ask, he's always like this. Caleb set his plate down and immediately started signing, his movements enthusiastic but clumsy. Nice meet you. The grammar was off, the hand shapes a little unclear, but the intention was unmistakable. Nina giggled again, more open this time. You're learning to sign? Dad's teaching me, Caleb said, his spoken words tumbling over his signs in a chaotic jumble. I'm not very good yet. I keep mixing up the letters. That's okay, Nina signed kindly. It's hard at first. Can you teach me something? Caleb asked, bouncing on his toes with barely contained energy. Something cool? Nina considered this seriously, then signed, Do you know the sign for friend? Caleb shook his head. Nina demonstrated, bringing her hooked index fingers together, then reversing them. Like this. It means friends who stick together. That's perfect, Caleb attempted the sign, getting it mostly right on the 3rd try. We can be friends. Okay, Nina agreed, her smile so bright it made Claire's eyes sting. Caleb, Ethan said gently, why don't you let Nina finish her dinner before you drag her into your cookie empire over there? Can I sit here? Caleb asked, already pulling out the chair next to Nina. I promise I'll share my desserts. Well, maybe not the brownies, but definitely the cake. Nina looked at Claire, seeking permission. Claire managed a nod, not trusting her voice. And just like that, the 2 children fell into easy conversation, Caleb talking a mile a minute while attempting to sign, Nina patiently correcting his hand shapes and giggling at his mistakes. They created their own little bubble at the end of the table, completely absorbed in each other. Claire stared at her plate, blinking hard. I'm sorry, Ethan said quietly, pitched for her ears only. We kind of ambushed you. If it's too much, I can redirect him. Caleb's like a golden retriever puppy sometimes, all enthusiasm and no awareness of personal space. No, Claire said quickly, then forced herself to look at him. No, this is... You have no idea what this is. Ethan studied her face, and whatever he saw there made his expression soften. I might have some idea, actually. Rachel, my sister, she talks about how isolating it can be, how exhausting it is to always be the one explaining, advocating, translating. Your sister is deaf? Claire asked, seizing on the safer topic. Since birth. Genetic. same as about 30% of her graduating class at the state school for the deaf. Ethan picked up his fork, moved some food around his plate without eating. Growing up, we all learned to sign. My parents, me, even our younger brother, though he was terrible at it. It was just part of how we communicated. That must have been wonderful for her, Claire said, and couldn't quite keep the wistfulness out of her voice. It was normal, Ethan said, which I think was the wonderful part. She wasn't special needs or differently abled or any of those other terms people use to dance around saying deaf. She was just Rachel, our sister who happened to sign instead of speak. Claire looked at Nina, watching her daughter explain something to Caleb with animated gestures. Nina's father didn't see it that way. The words were out before she could stop them. Too personal, too revealing. She never talked about Marcus. Never. But Ethan just nodded, no judgment in his expression. Caleb's mom didn't stick around either, left when he was 3. Said she wasn't cut out for motherhood. He said it matter-of-factly, but Claire could hear the old pain underneath. "I'm sorry," Claire said. "I'm not. Not anymore." Ethan finally took a bite of his chicken, made a face. "Well, I'm sorry about tonight's menu. Did they actually hire a caterer or just heat up frozen dinners?" Claire surprised herself by laughing. A real laugh, not the polite corporate chuckle she'd perfected. "I was wondering the same thing." They fell into easier conversation after that. Ethan was, Claire discovered, refreshingly normal. He talked about the chaos of single parenting, about Caleb's obsession with Pokemon cards, about the disaster that was trying to help with 4th grade math homework. He asked about her work, actually listening to her answers instead of waiting for his turn to talk. It was the kind of conversation Claire had forgotten was possible, genuine, unforced, between two people who understood the particular exhaustion of doing everything alone. "Mama!" Nina's hand waved urgently in her peripheral vision. Claire turned to find her daughter's face flushed with excitement. "Caleb knows about the Winter Festival. Can we go, please?" Claire's stomach sank. The Winter Festival was the city's big holiday event. Ice skating, light displays, holiday market stalls. She'd seen the ads, had carefully avoided mentioning it because she knew exactly how it would go. Crowds, noise, people bumping into Nina without warning because they didn't realize she couldn't hear them approaching. The inevitable stares when Claire had to sign instead of speak. The questions from strangers, the well-meaning but exhausting curiosity. "We'll see, baby," Claire signed, the universal parent deflection. "We went last weekend," Caleb chimed in, apparently able to follow enough of the signing to understand the topic. "It was so cool. They have this huge Christmas tree made entirely of lights, and there's hot chocolate, and oh, they have a Santa!" Nina's face fell slightly. "Santa doesn't sign." The matter-of-fact resignation in her daughter's signs made Claire's heart crack. "Actually," Ethan said carefully, "I heard they might have a signing Santa this year. At least on certain days, they've been making the festival more accessible." Nina's eyes went wide. "Really?" "Really?" Ethan confirmed, and when his eyes met Claire's over the children's heads, she saw the understanding there. He wasn't making it up, or if he was, it was the kindest lie she'd ever heard. "Can we check, Mama?" Nina signed. "Just to see?" Claire managed to smile. "We'll look into it." The rest of the dinner passed in a blur. The quartet played on, the executives kept networking, the caterers cleared plates and brought dessert. But at their small corner table, something else was happening, something Claire had never quite experienced before. Community. Connection. The simple gift of not having to explain. When Caleb monopolized the conversation, Ethan gently redirected him to include Nina. When Nina struggled to follow Caleb's rapid-fire speech, Caleb instinctively slowed down without being asked. When other people at the table glanced over at the signing, looking curious or confused, Ethan calmly continued as if this was the most normal thing in the world. Because for him, Claire realized, it was. "Mama, can Caleb be my friend?" Nina asked during dessert, her signs hesitant, like she was afraid to hope too much. "If his dad says it's okay," Claire signed back. Nina turned to Ethan with such hopeful expectation that Claire saw him visibly melt. "I think that would be great," Ethan signed and said. Caleb could use more friends who are patient with his terrible signing. "Hey!" Caleb protested. I'm getting better. You signed bathroom instead of butterfly 3 times tonight, Ethan pointed out. Those should not be so similar, Caleb argued, and Nina dissolved into giggles. As the evening wound down and people started making their departures, Claire found herself reluctant to leave. This small bubble they'd created felt safe, warm. The real world, the one where she navigated everything alone, where Nina's needs were always her sole responsibility, waited outside the ballroom doors. Mama, are we leaving? Nina signed, reading her mother's face with the uncanny accuracy she'd developed over years of depending on visual cues. Soon, baby. Can we see Caleb again? Before Claire could formulate an answer that was honest but wouldn't crush her daughter's hopes, Ethan spoke up. Hey, he said, pulling out his phone. Can I get your number? The kids seem to really hit it off, and I know Caleb would love to practice his signing. Maybe we could arrange a play date sometime. Claire hesitated. Every instinct screamed at her to politely decline, to protect Nina from the inevitable disappointment when Ethan realized how much work it was to be around them, when the novelty wore off and the reality set in. But Nina was looking at her with such hope, and Caleb was bouncing excitedly, and Ethan's expression was open and genuine and, "Okay," Claire heard herself say. "Yeah, that would be nice." They exchanged numbers, made vague plans to text after the holidays. Caleb and Nina did an elaborate goodbye that involved 3 different handshakes Caleb had apparently invented on the spot. And then Claire and Nina were making their way out of the ballroom into the cold December night toward their car in the parking garage. "Did you have fun, baby?" Claire signed once they were settled in the car. "So much fun!" Nina's signs were emphatic, excited. "Caleb is so nice, Mama, and Ethan knows signs just like you. Does that mean he has a daughter like me?" "A sister," Claire corrected. "His sister is deaf. Does she teach kindergarten like he said?" "I think so, yes." Nina was quiet for a moment, processing. Then, "Mama, do you think we'll really see them again?" Claire started the car, focusing on the mechanics of backing out of the parking space so she didn't have to meet her daughter's eyes. "I don't know, sweetie. People say they'll call, but sometimes they get busy." "Oh." The single sign was small, disappointed. "But maybe," Claire added, surprising herself. "Maybe Ethan meant it." Nina brightened. "I think he did. Did you see how Caleb looked at him? Like he really loves his dad. And Ethan wasn't scared of me." "Nobody should be scared of you," Claire signed fiercely. "I know, but sometimes they are. Because I'm different." Nina said it so calmly, so acceptingly, that it broke Claire's heart all over again. They drove home through quiet streets, holiday lights twinkling from houses and storefronts. The radio played carols Claire couldn't hear over the sound of her own thoughts. Tonight had been impossible. A man who signed fluently, whose son wanted to be Nina's friend, who looked at Claire like she was a person instead of a problem. It was too convenient, too perfect. Real life didn't work that way. Claire had learned that lesson the hard way when Marcus left, when her own parents suggested that maybe Nina would be better off at a special school. When every birthday party invitation went to other kids but somehow never arrived for Nina. When Claire had to fight the school district for basic accommodations, when doctors spoke over Nina's head like she wasn't there, when the world proved over and over again that it had no space for children who didn't fit the mold. She'd built walls to protect them both. Made peace with isolation because isolation was safer than hope, and hope was just another word for setting yourself up for disappointment. But tonight, for just a few hours, someone had slipped past those walls, had seen Nina, really seen her, and smiled. Claire's phone buzzed as she pulled into their driveway. She glanced at it while Nina unbuckled her seatbelt. Unknown number. "Hey, it's Ethan. Caleb is already asking when he can see Nina again. No pressure, but if you guys want to get together this weekend, we're free. Maybe the park. Or if that's too cold, there's a children's museum that's supposed to be great." Claire stared at the message. Her finger hovered over the delete button. Nina tapped her shoulder. "What is it?" "Ethan texted," Claire signed. "He wants to know if you want to play with Caleb this weekend." Nina's entire face transformed. "Really? Really, really? Really, really? Can we, Mama? Please, please, please?" Claire looked at her daughter's hopeful face, at the joy she'd seen so rarely these past few years, thought about the walls she'd built, about the safety they provided, and the loneliness they guaranteed. She took a breath, typed, "The park sounds great. Saturday afternoon?" The response came almost immediately. "Perfect. See you then." "We're going," Claire signed to Nina. "Saturday at the park." Nina squealed, another one of those rare vocalizations, and threw her arms around Claire's neck. "Thank you, Mama. Thank you, thank you, thank you." "You're welcome, baby." Claire held her daughter close, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo, feeling the solid warmth of her small body. Maybe this would be a disaster. Maybe Ethan would realize how complicated their life was and quietly back away. Maybe the play date would be awkward and uncomfortable and reinforce everything Claire already knew about why staying isolated was easier. But maybe, just maybe, it wouldn't. As they walked into the house together, Nina still chattering excitedly about Caleb and the park and what games they might play, Claire allowed herself the smallest flicker of something she'd almost forgotten how to feel. Hope. It was dangerous and foolish and probably going to end in tears. But for tonight, watching her daughter glow with happiness, Claire decided to let it be. Outside, snow began to fall, soft, silent, covering the world in white. And in a small house on a quiet street, a mother and daughter made hot chocolate and talked about friendship, about Saturday, about the impossible coincidence of meeting someone who spoke their language. Neither of them knew yet that this was just the beginning, that the man from accounting with the kind eyes and the signing hands would become so much more than a friendly acquaintance, that the walls Claire had built so carefully would come down piece by piece, not through force, but through gentle, persistent kindness. That sometimes the most profound moments of our lives happen in the most ordinary places, at boring company dinners, in conversations that start with a simple hello, signed instead of spoken. But they'd find out soon enough. For now, there was hot chocolate and laughter and the soft sound of snow falling outside. For now, that was enough. Saturday arrived with the kind of crystalline winter sunshine that made everything look like a postcard. Claire had changed her outfit 3 times that morning, ridiculous for a casual park playdate, but she couldn't seem to help herself. She finally settled on jeans and a cream-colored sweater, casual but put together, the kind of outfit that said, "I didn't try too hard while absolutely having tried too hard." Nina had been awake since dawn, too excited to sleep. She'd laid out her own clothes the night before. Purple leggings, her favorite unicorn sweatshirt, the pink winter coat with the fuzzy hood. Every few minutes she'd ask if it was time to go yet, her signs getting progressively more emphatic. "We're leaving in 10 minutes, Claire signed for the 4th time, checking her watch. They'd agreed to meet at 2 o'clock. It was currently 1:15. "Can we leave now?" Nina pleaded. "What if we're late?" "We won't be late, baby. We're actually going to be early if we don't slow down." But Claire understood the anxiety underneath her daughter's excitement. Nina had been disappointed before. Birthday parties where the other kids drifted away after 5 minutes, playdates that never got rescheduled, the slow fade of interest that happened when people realized that including Nina meant actual effort. They arrived at Riverside Park at 1:45, which was still absurdly early, but Claire couldn't stand the nervous energy in the car anymore. The park was moderately crowded for a Saturday afternoon. Families with young children on the playground, a few joggers on the path, someone walking a golden retriever that kept stopping to investigate every tree. "Do you see them?" Nina signed, craning her neck to scan the playground. "Not yet, sweetie. We're a little early." They found a bench with a good view of the entrance and waited. Claire tried to look relaxed, casual, like this was no big deal. Nina practically vibrated with anticipation beside her. At 1:58, Claire spotted them. Ethan was walking up the path with Caleb bouncing along beside him, the boy's arms windmilling as he talked. Even from a distance, Claire could see Ethan's patient expression, the way he nodded at whatever enthusiastic monologue Caleb was delivering. Nina saw them a second later and jumped to her feet, waving both arms over her head. Caleb spotted her immediately and broke into a run, his father calling after him to slow down. He skidded to a stop in front of Nina, slightly out of breath, his face split in a huge grin. "Hi," he signed, getting the hand shape right this time. "I've been practicing," Nina giggled. "That was good." "Dad made me practice every day," Caleb confided. "He says if I'm going to have a friend who signs, I need to actually learn to communicate properly." He signed the last part too, though his movements were still a bit clumsy. Ethan arrived at a more reasonable pace, slightly winded. Sorry, someone apparently forgot that walking is an option. I was excited, Caleb protested. Nina, do you want to see the playground? They have this really cool spiral slide. Can I, Mama? Nina asked, already inching toward the playground. Claire glanced at Ethan, who nodded. I'll keep an eye on them. Go ahead. The children took off, Caleb already explaining the intricacies of the playground equipment with grand gestures that may or may not have been actual signs. He really did practice, Ethan said, settling onto the bench beside Claire. Drove me crazy asking how to sign different things. Dad, how do you sign pizza? Dad, how do you sign awesome? Dad, how do you sign I'm bored with practicing signs? Claire laughed despite her nerves. That's very sweet of him. He's a good kid, Ethan said simply, and I think he's been lonely. We moved here about 8 months ago for my job, and he hasn't really connected with anyone at his new school yet. He was thrilled to make a friend. Nina too, Claire admitted, watching her daughter climb the ladder to the slide with Caleb right behind her. She doesn't have friends. Not really. No kids at school? She's in a mainstream classroom with an interpreter, which is great academically, but socially, Claire shrugged, the gesture encompassing years of isolation. The other kids are nice enough to her face, but they don't include her. Birthday parties happen without invitations. Playdates don't materialize. I think they just don't know how to interact with her, and it's easier not to try. Ethan was quiet for a moment, his eyes on the children. Caleb was demonstrating something at the top of the slide, his exaggerated expressions making Nina laugh. That must be incredibly hard, for both of you. It is what it is, Claire said, defaulting to the defensive minimization she'd perfected. We manage. I'm sure you do. Ethan's tone was mild, but something in it made Claire glance at him. But you shouldn't have to just manage. You deserve support. Nina deserves friendship. The simple kindness of it caught Claire off guard. She blinked hard, focusing on the playground. Your sister, Rachel, did she have friends growing up? Tons, Ethan said, but mostly other deaf kids from her school. There were a few hearing kids in the neighborhood who learned to sign, but it was definitely easier for her to connect with people who shared her language and experience. He paused. Is that an option for Nina? The state school for the deaf? Claire's jaw tightened. Her father wanted that. Wanted to send her away, put her with her own kind so he wouldn't have to deal with it. That's not what I meant. I know. Claire forced herself to relax. Sorry, it's a touchy subject. Marcus used the deaf school as an excuse to check out of her life entirely. Said she'd be better off with people who understood her, which was code for, I don't want to learn sign language, and I don't want to be responsible for a kid who requires effort. He sounds like an ass, Ethan said bluntly. Claire couldn't help the small smile. He really was. Is. I don't know. We haven't spoken in 5 years. His loss, Ethan said. Nina's amazing. She is. Claire watched her daughter go down the slide, her face bright with joy, Caleb cheering at the bottom. I've just been so determined to prove that she can exist in the hearing world, that she doesn't need to be separated or segregated, that she's just as capable as any other kid. She is just as capable, Ethan agreed, but that doesn't mean she shouldn't also have access to deaf community and culture. Rachel always said she needed both, the deaf world where she could just be herself without constantly translating or advocating, and the hearing world where she worked and lived. They're not mutually exclusive. Claire absorbed this, turning it over in her mind. I've been so focused on fighting for her inclusion in mainstream spaces that I never really considered. I mean, there's a deaf community center across town. They do family events sometimes. I always thought it wasn't for us because I'm hearing, because Nina's in a hearing school. You're her mom, Ethan said gently. Any deaf space should welcome both of you. And Nina might really benefit from being around other deaf kids, other deaf adults, seeing what her future could look like. Mama, watch! Nina was signing frantically from the top of the climbing structure. Claire waved acknowledgement, and Nina proceeded to navigate across a rope bridge with impressive confidence. She's fearless, Ethan observed. And on playgrounds, yes. In social situations, Claire trailed off. She's learned to be cautious, to not expect too much. Maybe we can change that, Ethan said. Starting with today. They fell into comfortable silence watching the kids play. Caleb was teaching Nina some kind of elaborate game that involved running between different pieces of equipment and apparently shouting rules that Nina couldn't hear but gamely tried to follow by watching his movements. After a few minutes of confusion, Caleb seemed to figure out the problem and started using exaggerated gestures and facial expressions instead, creating a kind of charades version of whatever game they were playing. "He's good with her," Claire said softly. "She's patient with him," Ethan countered. "He can be a lot. Very high energy, talks constantly, has approximately zero impulse control. His teacher keeps using words like spirited and enthusiastic, which I'm pretty sure is code for your kid won't sit still. Nina's the opposite. So careful, so controlled. Sometimes I wish she'd just let loose a little, you know? Be a normal, messy 7-year-old. Maybe they'll balance each other out." They did seem to, Claire realized over the next hour. Caleb's boundless energy drew Nina out of her shell, got her running and climbing and laughing. Nina's calmer presence seemed to ground Caleb, gave him someone to actually listen to instead of just bouncing off of. They created their own little world on the playground, complete with made-up games and inside jokes that seemed to develop instantaneously. "So," Ethan said after a while, "I have a potentially crazy idea." Claire's defenses went up immediately. "What kind of crazy?" "The Winter Festival, the one Caleb mentioned at the dinner." Ethan kept his tone casual, but Claire could sense the care behind it. "I did some research, and they do have ASL interpretation for some events this year, including assigning Santa on Sunday afternoons." Ethan, just hear me out. I know crowds can be tough, especially with Nina, but what if we went together? Caleb and I already know the layout from last weekend. We could go during the less crowded hours, have a plan, stay as long as it's fun, and leave when it's not. No pressure. Claire wanted to say no. Every instinct screamed at her to decline politely, to protect Nina from the potential disaster, to keep their world small and manageable and safe. But then Nina ran up, breathless and glowing. "Mama, can we stay longer, please?" "We just got here, baby." "I know, but I don't want it to end." Nina's signs were emphatic, joyful. "Caleb is teaching me a game called Zombie Tag, and it's so fun." "Zombie Tag?" Claire signed, raising an eyebrow. "You have to walk like this." Nina demonstrated a stiff-legged shuffle with outstretched arms, her face arranged in a silly expression that was presumably meant to be zombie-like. Caleb jogged up behind her, picking up on the last part of the conversation. "It's the best game ever," he announced. "Nina's really good at being a zombie. She makes the best faces." "Can we play for another hour?" Nina pleaded. "Or 2 hours? Or maybe forever?" Claire laughed. "How about 30 more minutes, and then we'll see." "Okay," Nina agreed instantly, already turning back toward the playground. "Wait," Ethan said, catching the children's attention. He signed as he spoke. "Nina, how would you feel about going to the Winter Festival with us? Maybe next weekend?" Nina's eyes went wide. She looked at Claire, then back at Ethan, like she was afraid to believe it. "The one with the signing Santa?" "That's the one." "Really? We can really go?" Nina's signs were small, careful, like she was trying not to hope too hard. "If your mom says yes," Ethan confirmed, glancing at Claire. Every eye was suddenly on her. Nina's desperate hope, Caleb's excitement, Ethan's careful neutrality that somehow conveyed he'd understand if she said no, but really hoped she wouldn't. Claire took a breath, let it out slowly. "Okay, we can go." The children's celebration was immediate and enthusiastic. Caleb whooped and Nina jumped up and down, both of them talking over each other until Ethan gently reminded Caleb that Nina couldn't actually hear his excited babbling. "Right, sorry." Caleb switched to his clumsy signing. "This will be so cool. We can show you everything." "Can we get hot chocolate?" Nina asked. "Obviously," Caleb said, like this was the most important part. "You can't go to the Winter Festival without hot chocolate. It's basically the law." The kids ran off again, already making elaborate plans. Claire felt the familiar swirl of anxiety in her stomach. All the things that could go wrong, all the ways this could turn into a nightmare. "Hey," Ethan said quietly. "If you're not comfortable with this, it's okay. I shouldn't have put you on the spot like that." "No, it's fine. I want to go. I want Nina to experience this." Claire forced a smile. I tend to catastrophize, start imagining all the ways it could be terrible. That's fair, but maybe it won't be terrible. Maybe it'll be great. You're an optimist. Reformed pessimist, Ethan corrected. When Jenny, Caleb's mom, left, I spent about a year convinced that everything was going to fall apart, that I couldn't possibly do this alone, that Caleb would be damaged forever. But we survived, more than survived. We built a good life, just the two of us. How did you do it? Claire asked before she could stop herself. I mean, I'm still in survival mode most of the time, just trying to get through each day without anything going wrong. Ethan considered this. I had to let go of what I thought our life was supposed to look like. Stop comparing our reality to some imaginary perfect family and just embrace what we actually had. Caleb and me figuring it out together, making mistakes, learning as we went. I'm terrified of making mistakes with Nina, Claire admitted. Every decision feels so high stakes. What school, what therapy, how much to push for inclusion versus accepting limitations. It's exhausting. I bet. And you're doing it with the added layer of navigating the deaf-hearing divide, which I can't even imagine. Some days I'm convinced I'm screwing it all up, that I should have learned more signs before she was born, or pushed harder for early intervention, or, I don't know, something. Can I tell you what I see? Ethan asked gently. I see a kid who's confident and kind and knows she's loved. Nina's not afraid to take up space on that playground. She's not ashamed of signing. That doesn't happen by accident. That comes from having a mom who's fought for her every single day. Claire's throat tightened. I'm just doing what any parent would do. No, Ethan said firmly. You're doing what you wish all parents would do. There's a difference. They sat in silence for a moment, watching the children play. Nina had apparently become the zombie now, chasing Caleb around the slide with exaggerated movements that had him laughing so hard he could barely run. Can I ask you something? Claire said eventually. Why did you approach us? At the dinner, you didn't have to engage with Nina. Most people wouldn't have. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. When I was a kid, maybe 10 or 11, we went to this restaurant as a family. The waiter came over and did the whole automatic thing, looked at my parents, asked what they wanted to order, completely talked over Rachel, even though she was sitting right there. My mom finally interrupted and said, "Maybe you could ask her directly," and handed the waiter a communication card Rachel carried. He smiled at the memory. The waiter got so flustered. He didn't know any sign language, didn't know how to handle it, but he tried. He looked directly at Rachel, spoke clearly so she could read his lips, wrote down options when she didn't understand. It was awkward and imperfect, but he tried. And I remember how Rachel's whole face lit up, being treated like a person instead of an inconvenience. So when you saw Nina at the dinner, I saw a little girl being ignored at a table full of adults who couldn't be bothered. And I thought about Rachel, about how many times she'd been invisible in spaces that should have welcomed her. I couldn't fix all of that, but I could at least say hello. Claire felt something crack open in her chest. That was, thank you. You have no idea what that meant, to her and to me. I think I have some idea, Ethan said quietly. On the playground, Caleb had apparently been caught by zombie Nina and was now dramatically performing his own transformation, complete with theatrical groaning and stumbling. Nina was laughing so hard she had to sit down. They're really good together, Claire observed. They are. Caleb's been happier this week than I've seen him in months. He talks about Nina constantly. Dad, do you think Nina likes Pokemon? Dad, how do you sign You're Awesome? Dad, can we invite Nina to my birthday party? When's his birthday? Not until March, but he's already planning. I'm pretty sure the whole party is going to be sign language themed at this point. Claire laughed. Nina would love that. We should exchange email too, Ethan suggested, in case texting gets lost in the shuffle. And maybe, if you're comfortable, we could set up regular play dates? Every weekend or every other weekend? Give the kids something to look forward to. The offer was so casual, so normal, but it felt monumental to Claire. Regular play dates meant ongoing commitment. It meant showing up consistently. It meant opening her carefully controlled life to someone else's schedule and needs, and inevitable complications. It meant risk. I'd like that, Claire heard herself say. Nina would love that. Great. Ethan pulled out his phone. What's your email? They exchanged information, making tentative plans for next Saturday's festival trip. Ethan suggested meeting at 2 in the afternoon when it wouldn't be too crowded, but before it got dark. He'd already looked up parking options and identified which entrance had the most accessible layout. You really did your research, Claire said, impressed despite herself. I like to be prepared. Caleb calls it my dad superpower, the ability to have a plan for everything. Ethan grinned. Of course, he also immediately destroys every plan with his chaos energy, but at least I tried. I do the same thing. Nina calls it my worry face. We're definitely both overthinkers. Recovering control freaks? Let's go with conscientious parents, Ethan suggested. Sounds better. The children returned sweaty and exhilarated. Mama, I'm thirsty, Nina signed. Me too, Caleb added. Can we get a snack? There's a coffee shop across the street, Ethan said, glancing at Claire. Want to grab something? My treat. Claire hesitated only a moment. Sure, that sounds good. The coffee shop was warm and crowded, decorated with garlands and twinkling lights. They found a table near the window while Ethan went to order hot chocolates for the kids, coffee for the adults, and a plate of cookies to share. Nina and Caleb immediately fell into animated conversation, Caleb's signing improving noticeably with practice. He still made mistakes, but Nina patiently corrected him, and he accepted her guidance with cheerful determination. You're a really good teacher, Ethan signed to Nina when he returned with their order. Nina ducked her head, pleased. Caleb's a good student. He tries really hard. That's because you're a good friend, Caleb said, attempting to sign it and getting most of the way there. The casual declaration, you're a good friend, made Nina's entire face glow. Claire felt her eyes sting and quickly focused on her coffee. They spent an hour in the coffee shop, conversation flowing easily. Caleb told elaborate stories about his school, complete with dramatic reenactments. Nina shared about her favorite books, her hands moving expressively as she described characters and plots. The adults traded parenting war stories, Caleb's tendency to reorganize the kitchen at 3 in the morning, Nina's phase of only eating foods that were purple. It felt shockingly normal, like two families who'd known each other for years instead of less than a week. Mama, Nina signed during a lull in conversation, this is the best day ever. Yeah, Claire signed back, her heart full. Yeah, I have a friend now, a real friend. You do, baby. And you have a friend too, right? Nina's signs were sly, teasing. Ethan is your friend? Claire glanced at Ethan, who was helping Caleb with a stubborn hot chocolate stain on his shirt. Yes, I think he is. Good. You need friends too, Mama. You're always alone. The simple observation, delivered without any awareness of how devastating it was, nearly broke Claire. She'd thought she'd been so good at hiding it, the loneliness, the isolation, the bone-deep exhaustion of carrying everything herself. But of course Nina had noticed. Children always noticed. Well, I'm not alone anymore, Claire signed, forcing a smile. We have Ethan and Caleb now. Promise we can see them again? Promise this isn't just one time? I promise, baby. We're going to the Winter Festival next weekend, remember? And after that? After that too. We'll figure it out. Nina threw her arms around Claire's neck in an impulsive hug. I love you, Mama. I love you too, sweetie. So much. When they finally left the coffee shop, the winter sun was already starting to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. They walked to the parking lot together, Caleb and Nina holding hands, swinging their arms between them. Thank you for today, Claire said to Ethan as they reached her car. This was really special. For us too. Ethan's smile was genuine, warm. Same time next week for the festival? We'll be there. Nina and Caleb executed an elaborate goodbye ritual that involved multiple high fives, a complicated handshake, and what appeared to be a secret sign they'd invented. Then Nina climbed into the car, waving until Ethan and Caleb disappeared from view. On the drive home, Nina was quiet, processing the day. Claire left her to her thoughts, her own mind spinning with everything that had happened. She'd let someone in. After years of keeping the world at arm's length, she'd agreed to regular playdates, to festival trips, to the terrifying vulnerability of connection. And surprisingly, it didn't feel as frightening as she'd expected. It felt like relief. Mama? Nina's hand appeared in Claire's peripheral vision. Can I ask you something? Of course, baby. Do you like Ethan? Like him? Claire's hand stayed steady on the wheel through sheer force of will. What do you mean? You smiled more today than I've seen in a long time, and you laughed. Real laughs, not the polite ones you do at work things. Smart kid. Too smart sometimes. Ethan is very nice, Claire signed at the next red light. I enjoyed spending time with him. But do you like him? Nina pressed, her signs emphatic. I don't really know him yet, sweetie. We just met. But you want to know him more? Claire considered lying, deflecting, but Nina deserved honesty. Yes, I think I do. Good. Nina settled back in her seat, satisfied. Because I think he likes you too. He kept looking at you when you weren't watching. Nina, and he learned about the festival signing Santa just for us. That's a lot of work for someone who's just being nice. Maybe he's just a thoughtful person. Maybe, Nina agreed, or maybe he likes you. Claire didn't know how to respond to that, so she focused on driving. But Nina's words echoed in her mind, along with the memory of Ethan's careful attention, his understanding about single parenting, the way his eyes had softened when he talked about Rachel. No, she was reading too much into it. Ethan was being kind, was facilitating a friendship between their kids. That was all, wasn't it? When they got home, Nina headed straight for her room, already making plans for what to wear to the festival. Claire stood in the kitchen, still in her coat, her phone in her hand. She pulled up Ethan's contact information, her thumb hovering over the message field. Thank you for today. Nina hasn't stopped smiling. She hit send before she could overthink it. The response came surprisingly quickly. Caleb either. Thank you for giving him a chance. A lot of kids find him too much. Nina thinks he's perfect. She told me it was the best day ever. Caleb said the same thing. I think this is the start of a beautiful friendship. Claire stared at that message for a long moment, reading layers into it that probably weren't there. Was he talking about the kids or something more? See you next Saturday, she typed finally. Safe, neutral. Can't wait, came the reply, followed by a smiley face emoji. Claire set her phone down, her heart doing something complicated in her chest. This was dangerous territory, letting herself feel things for someone, opening up to the possibility of more than just friendship. She'd sworn after Marcus left that she was done with relationships, done with the vulnerability and risk. Nina needed stability, not the chaos of Claire's romantic life. But Ethan wasn't Marcus. He signed with his son, researched accessibility options, showed up on time and meant what he said. He looked at Nina like she mattered, treated Claire like an equal instead of a problem to solve. And maybe, just maybe, that was worth the risk. The week passed in a blur of work and preparation. Claire found herself texting Ethan more than she'd expected. Small exchanges about their days, funny things the kids had done, questions about the festival logistics. The conversations were easy, natural, lacking the performance anxiety that usually characterized her interactions with other adults. Nina talked about Caleb constantly, practicing signs she wanted to teach him, making lists of things they could do together. She'd pull out her tablet in the evening and show Claire pictures she'd drawn. Her and Caleb at the park, the four of them at the festival, elaborate fantasies of future adventures. You really like him, huh? Claire signed one evening. He's my best friend, Nina signed matter-of-factly. I've never had a best friend before. Never? Nina shook her head. The kids at school are nice sometimes, but they don't really want to play with me. They think I'm weird because I sign. You're not weird, baby. You're perfect exactly as you are. I know that, but they don't. Nina's signs were pragmatic, accepting in a way that broke Claire's heart. But Caleb thinks signing is cool. He wants to learn. He doesn't think I'm weird at all. He's a smart kid. And Ethan is nice to you. He makes you happy. Nina studied her mother's face. You should keep him. Claire laughed despite herself. It doesn't work that way, sweetie. Why not? Because relationships are complicated, and we barely know them. So get to know them, Nina signed with 7-year-old logic. That's what friends do. Saturday arrived with heavy cloud cover and the threat of snow. Claire checked the weather forecast obsessively, worrying that they'd have to cancel, but by noon the clouds had cleared, leaving just the cold, crisp air. Nina was ready by 1 o'clock, dressed in layers and practically vibrating with excitement. Claire had to make her eat lunch, worried she'd crash from pure adrenaline if she didn't get some actual food. They arrived at the festival grounds at 2 on the dot. The place was transformed, thousands of lights strung between lampposts and trees, vendors selling everything from hand-knit scarves to roasted chestnuts, a massive Christmas tree dominating the central square. Music drifted from hidden speakers, and the air smelled like cinnamon and pine. Claire's anxiety spiked immediately. So many people, so much noise, so many potential problems. Then she spotted Ethan and Caleb waiting near the entrance, and something in her chest eased. Nina saw them at the same moment and took off running. Caleb met her halfway, both of them laughing as they collided in an enthusiastic hug. "Hey," Ethan said as Claire approached, "you made it." "We did." Claire managed to smile. It's a lot." "It is. But we've got a plan, remember?" Ethan pulled a small map from his pocket. "I scoped out the layout. There's a quieter section over here with the craft vendors, less crowded than the food area. The signing Santa is set up in a separate building, appointment-based, so no long lines. We can take breaks whenever we need to." The fact that he'd thought through all of this, that he understood without Claire having to explain why crowds were hard, it made something warm unfold in her chest. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for planning this." "Of course." His smile was soft, understanding. "Ready?" Claire looked at Nina, who was already pulling Caleb toward the entrance, both children bouncing with excitement. "Ready," she agreed. And together, they stepped into the light. The festival was everything Claire had feared and somehow nothing like she'd expected. Yes, there were crowds, families bundled in winter coats, couples holding hands, groups of teenagers laughing too loudly. Yes, there was noise. Christmas music competing with vendors calling out their wares, children squealing, the general buzz of too many people in too small a space. But Ethan navigated them through it like he'd drawn a map specifically for their needs, finding the pockets of calm between the chaos. They started in the craft section, just like he'd suggested. The vendors here were quieter, more focused on their wares than on aggressive selling. Nina was immediately drawn to a booth selling hand-painted ornaments, her eyes wide as she studied each delicate design. "Can I look, Mama?" she signed. "Of course, baby. Just careful, they're fragile." The vendor, an older woman with kind eyes and silver hair, noticed Nina's signing. "Does she like the snowflakes? I made those special this year." Before Claire could launch into her usual explanation, Ethan spoke up. "She's deaf. If you talk to her directly and make sure she can see your face, she can read lips pretty well." The woman's expression didn't change to that overly sympathetic look Claire dreaded. Instead, she simply turned to Nina, spoke clearly and slowly. "The snowflakes are my favorite too. Each one is different, just like real snow." Nina's face lit up. She pointed to one with intricate blue and silver details, looking at Claire hopefully. "It's beautiful," Claire signed. "Do you want it for our tree?" Nina nodded enthusiastically. Claire reached for her wallet, but Ethan was already handing cash to the vendor. "Ethan, you don't have to—" "I want to," he said simply. "Consider it a friendship gift." The vendor wrapped the ornament carefully in tissue paper, handed it to Nina with a smile. Nina signed "thank you" automatically, and to Claire's surprise, the woman signed back. A simple, somewhat clumsy, "you're welcome," but the effort was there. "My granddaughter is learning ASL in school," the vendor explained to Claire. "She's been teaching me. I'm not very good yet." "That's wonderful," Claire said, meaning it. "Every little bit helps." As they moved on, Nina clutching her wrapped ornament like treasure, Caleb tugged on his father's sleeve. "Dad, can I get one too? For our tree?" "Sure, bud. Pick whichever one you want." Caleb deliberated with intense seriousness before selecting a bright red ornament shaped like a cardinal. "This one. It matches Nina's. See? Snow and a winter bird. They go together." Nina beamed at him, and Claire felt that now familiar tightness in her throat. These small moments of acceptance, of inclusion, they shouldn't feel so monumental, but they did. They wandered through more booths, the children running ahead and then circling back like puppies, their excitement infectious. Caleb bought a pair of fuzzy gloves with his own money, proudly showing them to Nina. Nina found a booth selling bookmarks with inspirational quotes and spent 10 minutes choosing the perfect one for her classroom interpreter. Mrs. Patterson is really nice, Nina explained to Caleb, her signs animated. She helps me understand what the teacher is saying, and she never gets mad when I ask questions. That's cool, Caleb said, watching her hands carefully. So she's like, your teacher's voice? Sort of, but she also helps the teacher understand my voice. Claire watched this exchange, marveling at how Caleb just got it. No confusion, no awkward questions about why Nina needed help, just acceptance and genuine interest. You hungry? Ethan asked as they passed the food vendors. The smell of roasting nuts and cinnamon was almost overwhelming. Starving, Claire admitted. Nina, are you hungry? Nina looked up from where she'd been examining a display of glass figurines. Can we get hot chocolate with marshmallows? Obviously with marshmallows, Caleb interjected. What kind of monster drinks hot chocolate without marshmallows? They found a relatively quiet spot near the hot chocolate stand, a small seating area partially sheltered by a decorated pergola. Ethan went to order while Claire helped the kids get settled at a picnic table. This is so fun, Mama, Nina signed, her whole face glowing. Look at all the lights. The tree in the central square was visible from where they sat, thousands of white lights creating a cascade of brilliance against the gray winter sky. Claire had to admit it was beautiful, magical even. Having fun? She signed back. The best fun. Is Ethan having fun too? I think so. Why? Because he keeps looking at you with a smile, like he's happy you're here. Nina, I'm just saying what I see, her daughter signed innocently. Ethan returned with a cardboard carrier holding 4 steaming cups, 2 hot chocolates with extra marshmallows for the kids and 2 coffees for the adults, although he set a cup in front of Claire. I got you one with caramel, since you mentioned liking it the other day. Claire stared at the cup. He'd remembered, from a casual comment she'd made during one of their text exchanges about coffee preferences, something she'd barely thought about after sending. Thank you, she said, the words feeling inadequate. They sipped their drinks while the children chattered, Caleb telling elaborate stories about previous visits to the festival, Nina listening with rapt attention. The hot chocolate left foam mustaches on both kids' faces, which they thought was hilarious. So, Ethan said quietly to Claire, how are you holding up? I know crowds can be stressful. Better than I expected, honestly. You were right about having a plan. It helps. Rachel taught me that. When we'd go to new places, my parents always had an exit strategy, quiet zones mapped out, ways to make things more manageable. It became second nature. I usually just avoid situations like this entirely, Claire admitted. Easier than dealing with the potential meltdowns. Whose meltdowns? Nina's or yours? Ethan's tone was teasing but gentle. Claire laughed despite herself. Fair point, probably mine. Hey, no judgment. Single parenting is already hard enough without adding extra complications, whatever coping mechanisms work. Is that what you tell yourself when Caleb reorganizes your kitchen at 3 a.m.? I tell myself a lot of things at 3 a.m., most of them not appropriate for young ears. Ethan grinned. But yeah, basically, we do what we have to do to survive. Dad, Caleb interrupted, bouncing in his seat. Can we go see the Santa now? Is it time? Ethan checked his phone. Our appointment is in 20 minutes. We should probably head that way. Nina's expression shifted immediately. Excitement mixed with nervousness. What if he doesn't really sign? She asked Claire. What if it's just someone pretending? Then we leave, Claire signed firmly. No fuss, no forcing you to sit through something uncomfortable, okay? Nina nodded, but Claire could see the hope warring with caution in her daughter's face. She'd been disappointed too many times to fully trust that this would be different. The Santa setup was in a separate building, away from the main festival chaos. Inside, the atmosphere was calmer, more controlled. A helper elf, a teenage girl with candy cane striped tights, checked them in. You must be the 2:30 appointment, she said cheerfully, then noticed Nina and switched seamlessly to signing as she spoke. Hi, Santa's so excited to meet you. He's finishing up with another family, but he'll be ready in just a few minutes. Nina's eyes went wide. The elf signed. The elf actually signed, and signed well. That's Sarah, Ethan explained. I called ahead and talked to the organizers. She's a CODA, child of deaf adults. She volunteers here specifically for the accessible sessions. Claire felt something crack open in her chest. You called ahead. Wanted to make sure it was legitimate, not just someone who knew the alphabet or something. Before Claire could formulate a response that encompassed the enormity of that simple thoughtfulness, Sarah was waving them forward. Santa's ready. The Santa they encountered was younger than the traditional image, maybe in his early 40s, with a real beard that was more salt than pepper under the white dye. But what made Nina freeze in her tracks was the way he greeted her. Hello, Nina, he signed, his movements fluid and natural. I'm so glad you came to visit me today. Nina's mouth fell open. She looked at Claire, then back at Santa, then at Claire again, like she couldn't quite believe what she was seeing. Go ahead, baby, Claire signed. You can talk to him. Nina approached slowly, still cautious. Santa remained seated, giving her time, not rushing. When she finally got close enough, he signed, I heard you've been very good this year. Is that true? Nina nodded, finding her voice. Well, her hands. I try to be good. I help Mama and I do my homework and I'm nice to people. That's wonderful. What would you like for Christmas? Nina thought about this seriously. Claire expected her to ask for toys, maybe books, the tablet upgrade she'd been hinting about. Instead, Nina signed, I want my Mama to be happy. She's always tired and worried. I want her to smile more. Claire's vision blurred. She felt Ethan's hand find hers, squeeze gently, and she held on like an anchor. Santa's expression softened. That's a very thoughtful wish. You know what I think? I think your Mama is happy because she has such a kind, smart daughter, but I'll see what I can do about the smiling part. He winked, an exaggerated gesture that made Nina giggle. Anything else? Santa asked. Maybe some books, Nina added, more childlike now, and art supplies, and she glanced at Caleb, who was watching from the side with his father. I want Caleb to stay my friend forever. Now that's a wish I can definitely support, Santa signed. Friends like Caleb are special. You should hold on to that friendship. They talked for a few more minutes, Santa asking about school and her favorite subjects, Nina relaxing more with each exchange. When it was time for the photo, Santa invited Caleb to join them, and the two children posed on either side of him, both beaming. Thank you, Claire signed to Santa as they prepared to leave. You have no idea what this means. I have some idea, he signed back with a kind smile. My son is deaf. I learned sign language when he was born, and I've been doing these accessible Santa sessions ever since. Every child deserves to tell Santa what they want in their own language. As they left the building, Nina was practically floating. Mama, did you see? He signed, really signed, and he understood everything I said. I saw, baby. That was pretty special, wasn't it? The most special thing ever, except maybe meeting Caleb. Nina grabbed her friend's hand. Did you like Santa? He was so cool, Caleb agreed, and he signed so fast, I could only understand some of it. That's okay. You're still learning. Nina patted his hand consolingly. You'll get better. They emerged back into the festival, the afternoon light already starting to fade. The lights were more visible now, creating a fairyland glow across the entire grounds. There's one more thing, Ethan said, checking his phone again. If you're up for it. What kind of thing? Claire asked, suspicious of the slightly mischievous note in his voice. There's a light show in about 15 minutes, but it's not just lights. They've added ASL interpretation to the music, projected onto a screen. Thought Nina might enjoy it. Claire stared at him. You're serious? Completely. Found it when I was researching. They've been making the whole festival more accessible this year. Pretty cool, actually. Nina was already tugging on Claire's coat. Can we watch, Mama, please? Of course we can watch. They found a spot with a good view of both the main tree and the projection screen. As more people gathered, Claire tensed automatically, but Ethan positioned them at the edge of the crowd, leaving an easy exit route. When the show started, it was breathtaking. The tree lit up in synchronized patterns while the screen showed an interpreter signing the lyrics to classic Christmas songs. But it wasn't dry or formal. The interpreter was expressive, theatrical, making the music come alive through movement and expression. Nina watched, transfixed. Claire watched Nina, her heart so full it hurt. Then she felt Ethan's hand slip into hers again. Not presumptuous, not demanding, just there, offering connection. Claire laced her fingers through his and didn't let go. The show lasted maybe 15 minutes, but it felt suspended in time. This perfect moment of beauty and inclusion and belonging. When it ended, Nina turned to Claire with tears streaming down her face. "That was beautiful, Mama. I could see the music. I could really see it." Claire pulled her daughter close, holding tight. Over Nina's head, she met Ethan's eyes and saw understanding there, and something else, something warm and tender that made her breath catch. By the time they finally left the festival, it was fully dark, the lights even more spectacular against the night sky. Both children were exhausted, leaning against their respective parents as they walked. "Thank you," Claire said to Ethan as they reached the parking lot, "for all of this, for planning it, for making it accessible, for everything." "It was my pleasure," Ethan said softly. Seeing Nina's face during that light show, that was worth all the research. She's never experienced anything like that before. Music made visible, in her language. I didn't even know that was possible. There's a whole world of accessible experiences out there. You just have to know where to look. Nina and Caleb were already arranging their next play date, making elaborate plans that involved teaching Caleb more signs and Nina learning about Pokemon. "Next weekend?" Ethan suggested. "Or is that too much too fast?" "Next weekend sounds perfect," Claire said. Then, because Nina's words earlier had given her courage, "Would you want to get dinner sometime, just the two of us? I mean, if you can find a sitter for Caleb, are you asking me on a date, Claire Monroe?" Ethan's eyes crinkled with his smile. "Maybe, unless that's weird. We can just do more group things if it's not weird. I'd love to get dinner." He paused. "I was actually trying to figure out how to ask you the same thing without making it awkward." "Really? Really? I've been thinking about it since the coffee shop last week." Claire felt heat rise to her cheeks. "Oh, is Friday too soon? There's this Italian place downtown that's supposed to be amazing." "Friday works. Nina has art therapy until 6, but I could do 7:30? 7:30 is perfect." They stood there, grinning at each other like teenagers until Caleb broke the spell. "Dad, I'm tired. Can we go home?" "Yeah, bud. Let's head out." The goodbyes were prolonged. The children hugging multiple times, making promises to text, which meant Claire and Ethan would be texting on their behalf. The adults exchanging one more meaningful look. In the car, Nina was asleep before they left the parking lot, her new ornament clutched in one hand. Claire drove home in comfortable silence, her mind replaying the day. The vendor who'd tried to sign, the hot chocolate, Santa, the light show, Ethan's hand in hers, the question she'd asked and his answer. When they got home, Claire had to wake Nina gently, guide her stumbling and half asleep into the house and up to bed. She helped her daughter change into pajamas, tucked her in with her favorite stuffed rabbit. "Mama?" Nina signed sleepily. "Did you have fun today?" "I had the best time, baby." Because of the festival or because of Ethan? Even exhausted, her daughter was perceptive. "Both," Claire signed honestly. "The festival was magical. And Ethan he's very special. I knew you liked him." Nina's smile was triumphant even through her drowsiness. "You should marry him." "Nina." "What?" "He's nice, and he signs, and he likes you, and you like him. That's what people do when they like each other." "It's a little more complicated than that, sweetie." "Why?" Claire couldn't actually come up with a good answer to that. "Go to sleep. We'll talk about it when you're not half unconscious." "Okay, but I'm right." Nina's eyes were already closing. "You should keep him." Claire kissed her forehead, smoothed her hair back. "Sleep, baby girl." Downstairs, Claire made herself tea and sat at the kitchen table, her phone in her hand. She pulled up her messages with Ethan. "Home safe." Nina fell asleep in the car. She told me it was the best day ever. His response came quickly. Caleb said the same. He's already planning next weekend's activities. Fair warning. It involves teaching Nina about dinosaurs. Nina's already planning to teach him more signs. This could get competitive. "Looking forward to Friday," Ethan sent. "The dinner. Just us." Claire's fingers hovered over the keyboard. This was the moment where she usually pulled back, found an excuse, protected herself from vulnerability. Instead, she typed, "Me too. I'm really looking forward to it. It's a date then. Officially. Officially." Claire set her phone down, her heart racing. A date. She was going on a date. After 7 years of solitary parenting, of keeping everyone at arm's length, of swearing off relationships entirely, she was going on a date. With a man who'd spent hours researching accessible festival options for her daughter, who signed fluently and naturally, who looked at Nina like she was a whole person instead of a problem, who made Claire laugh and challenged her assumptions, and somehow saw past every wall she'd built. The fear was still there, that this would go wrong somehow, that she'd mess it up, that Nina would get attached and then get hurt when things fell apart. But underneath the fear was something new, something fragile and hopeful and terrifying in the best possible way. The week between the festival and Friday's dinner passed in a blur of work and routine and Nina's constant chatter about Caleb. Claire found herself texting with Ethan throughout the day. Nothing major, just small exchanges about work frustrations and parenting victories and random observations. It was comfortable, easy, like they'd been friends for years instead of weeks. Thursday night, Claire stood in her closet having a minor crisis about what to wear. Too dressy would seem like she was trying too hard. Too casual might seem like she didn't care. She settled on dark jeans and a soft blue sweater that Nina said made her eyes pretty, then second-guessed herself 17 times. "Mama, you look beautiful," Nina signed when Claire came downstairs Friday evening. "Ethan will think so too." "I'm not trying to impress Ethan." Nina's expression clearly said, "Sure you're not," but she was kind enough not to sign it. The sitter arrived, a graduate student from the local university who'd taken ASL classes and had come highly recommended. Nina took to her immediately, already explaining the house rules and where everything was kept. "Have fun, Mama," Nina signed as Claire headed for the door. "Be yourself. He already likes you." "When did you get so wise?" Claire signed back. "I was born this wise. You just notice now." The restaurant Ethan had chosen was small and intimate, with exposed brick walls and candlelight, and the kind of quiet elegance that made Claire's anxiety spike. But then she saw him waiting at a table near the window, and he smiled, and something in her settled. "Hi," he said, standing as she approached. "You look beautiful." "Thank you. You look good. Really good." Claire silently cursed her awkwardness, but Ethan just smiled wider. "I'll take it." They ordered wine, made small talk about their weeks, slowly relaxed into the rhythm they'd established through texts and phone calls. The food was excellent. Claire had pasta with an intricate cream sauce. Ethan tried something with lamb that he enthusiastically offered her to taste. "So," Ethan said about halfway through the meal, "can I ask you something personal?" Claire's defenses went up automatically. "How personal?" "Nina's father. You mentioned he left, but I guess I'm wondering how much of a presence he is in her life, if he is at all." Claire took a long sip of wine, considering how much to share. But something about the gentle curiosity in Ethan's expression, the lack of judgment, made her want to be honest. Marcus is a successful corporate attorney, very focused on image, on success, on everything looking perfect from the outside. She traced the rim of her wine glass. "When we found out Nina was deaf, he suggested abortion, said it wasn't too late, that we could try again, have a normal baby." Ethan's expression darkened, but he didn't interrupt. "I refused. We fought about it constantly. He wanted me to consider adoption, institutional care, anything to make the problem go away. When I insisted on keeping her, learning sign language, doing early intervention, he just checked out, was there physically but completely absent emotionally. How long did that last? Until she was 2. Then he filed for divorce, signed away his parental rights, and I haven't heard from him since. Last I knew, he'd moved to Seattle, remarried someone more appropriate for his image." "I'm sorry," Ethan said quietly. "Not about the divorce. Honestly, you're better off without him, but I'm sorry Nina lost her father that way. She doesn't remember him. Sometimes I think that's better. No memories means no loss." Claire paused. But then I see her with you and Caleb, and I wonder what she missed out on, having a father who actually wanted her. His loss, Ethan said firmly. Completely and utterly his loss. Nina is extraordinary. She is, but not everyone sees that. Then they're not looking properly. Ethan reached across the table, his hand covering hers. Claire, can I tell you something? That first night at the dinner when I saw Nina sitting there alone, I was angry. Furious, actually. All those people walking past her, not even acknowledging she existed. And you, trying to protect her from that while managing your own stress. I'm used to it. You shouldn't have to be. Neither of you should have to be used to being overlooked. The intensity in his voice made Claire's chest tight. Ethan, I'm not trying to rescue you. I know you don't need rescuing, but I do want to be there for you. For both of you, if you'll let me. Claire looked at their joined hands, at the sincerity in his face, and felt the last of her walls start to crumble. That's terrifying. I know. I haven't let anyone close in 7 years. I don't know if I remember how. We'll figure it out together. Ethan smiled softly. No pressure, no expectations. Just let me try. Let us try. Claire thought about Nina's words that morning. Be yourself. He already likes you. Thought about the festival, about Ethan's careful planning, about the way he'd held her hand during the light show, about how for the first time in years she didn't feel alone. Okay, she heard herself say. Let's try. Ethan's smile could have lit up the entire restaurant. Yeah? Yeah. But I have to warn you, we're complicated. Nina's needs come first, always. My schedule is chaotic. I'm probably going to overthink everything and panic at least once a week. Caleb and I are complicated too. My schedule is just as chaotic, and I definitely overthink things. Ethan squeezed her hand. We're probably going to mess this up sometimes. Probably. But maybe we'll get it right more often than not. They finished dinner talking about lighter things, favorite movies, childhood stories, the disaster that was Caleb's recent attempt at cooking breakfast. But underneath the casual conversation, something had shifted. Some acknowledgement that this was more than just friendship, more than just their kids getting along. This was the beginning of something real. When Ethan walked her to her car, he hesitated before opening the door. Can I kiss you? Claire's heart hammered. Yes. It was soft, tentative, questioning, a first kiss that tasted like wine and possibility. When they broke apart, both slightly breathless, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. Worth the wait, he murmured. It's only been 2 weeks. Felt longer. Claire laughed, feeling lighter than she had in years. I should get home. The sitter... Right, of course. But Ethan didn't move away immediately, and neither did Claire. Finally, reluctantly, they separated. Claire drove home with a smile she couldn't suppress, her fingers touching her lips, replaying those few perfect seconds. Nina was still awake when she got home, supposedly reading in bed but clearly waiting to interrogate her mother. How was it? She signed the moment Claire appeared in her doorway. It was nice. Just nice? Okay, it was wonderful. Happy? Nina's grin was triumphant. Did he kiss you? Nina! I'm 7, not stupid. Did he? Claire couldn't help but smile. Yes, he kissed me. Nina squealed silently, bouncing on her bed. I knew it. I knew he liked you. Okay, calm down before you wake up the whole neighborhood. This is so exciting, Mama. Does this mean he's your boyfriend now? I don't know what it means yet. We're taking things slow. But you like him. I like him very much. And he makes you happy? Claire thought about the evening, about Ethan's hand in hers, his smile, the way he'd understood without her having to explain, about feeling seen and valued and less alone. Yes, baby. He makes me happy. Nina threw her arms around Claire's neck. Good. You deserve to be happy, Mama. You deserve someone who sees how amazing you are. Claire held her daughter close, breathing in her strawberry-scented shampoo, feeling the solid warmth of her small body. I love you so much, Nina. You know that? I know. I love you too. Nina pulled back, her face serious. But, Mama, promise me something? What? Don't be scared. I know you get scared when things are good, like you're waiting for them to get bad again. But Ethan is different. He's not like the other people who left. He's like us. He stays. The wisdom of it, coming from a 7-year-old, made Claire's eyes sting. When did you get so smart? I told you, I was born this way. Claire tucked Nina back into bed, kissed her forehead, and retreated to her own room. She changed into pajamas, washed her face, went through all the normal bedtime routines. But her mind was still at that restaurant, still feeling Ethan's kiss, still hearing his words. Let me try. Let us try. Her phone buzzed. Ethan, of course. Home safe? Home safe. Nina interrogated me about the kiss. What did you tell her? That it was nice. Just nice. Even through text, she could hear his teasing tone. Okay, amazing. Happy? Very. Same time next week? Claire smiled into the darkness. It's a date. It's definitely a date. Sleep well, Claire. You too. She set her phone on the nightstand and lay back, staring at the ceiling. Fear was still there, humming under her happiness. Fear that this wouldn't last, that something would go wrong, that she'd wake up and find it all disappearing like morning fog. But for now, in this moment, she chose to believe Nina's wisdom. Chose to believe that Ethan was different, that this time would be different, chose hope over fear, connection over isolation. Outside, snow began to fall again, silent and soft. And in a small house on a quiet street, a woman let herself believe in possibility for the first time in 7 years. The weeks that followed felt like watching a photograph develop, the image slowly coming into focus. What had started as playdates and friendly dinners gradually transformed into something deeper, something that wove itself into the fabric of their daily lives so naturally that Claire sometimes forgot to be terrified. Every Saturday became their day. Sometimes they'd go to the park, sometimes the children's museum, once to an indoor rock climbing facility where Nina surprised everyone by scaling the wall faster than Caleb. The kids' friendship deepened with each passing week, their communication becoming more fluid as Caleb's signing improved and Nina learned to read his enthusiastic body language. But it was the quiet moments that shifted everything. Tuesday evenings when Ethan would text asking if she'd eaten dinner yet, and somehow they'd end up on the phone for 2 hours while the kids did homework. Thursday mornings when he'd send her a coffee shop gift card with a note that said, "Because you mentioned being exhausted." The Sunday afternoon when Nina had a meltdown about a school project, and Ethan showed up with craft supplies and patience, helping her build a diorama while Claire watched from the doorway, her heart doing complicated things in her chest. 3 weeks after their first official date, Claire's carefully constructed routines faced their first real test. Emergency trip to Dallas, Douglas Reeves announced during the Monday morning operations meeting, his tone making it clear this wasn't a request. The Hutchinson implementation is going sideways and they want our lead ops person on site to troubleshoot. Your wheels up Wednesday morning, back Friday afternoon. Claire's stomach dropped. 3 days. 3 days away from Nina, 3 days of finding childcare, 3 days of everything that could go wrong. Wednesday? She repeated, mentally cycling through her backup options. Her usual sitter had classes on weekdays. Her neighbor was traveling. The teenager down the street had the flu. Problem? Douglas's eyebrow arched in a way that suggested problems were not acceptable. No problem. I'll be there. She spent the rest of Monday in a controlled panic, texting every possible contact, calling the backup childcare service that charged astronomical rates, growing increasingly desperate. By Monday evening, she was seriously considering calling in sick, fabricating some crisis that would make the trip impossible. Then her phone rang. Ethan. Hey, she answered, trying to keep the stress out of her voice. What's up? You sound weird. What's wrong? Nothing. I'm fine. Claire. The way he said her name, gentle but firm, like he could see right through her deflection, made her defenses crumble. I have to go to Dallas for work, Wednesday through Friday. And I can't find childcare for Nina, and I'm probably going to have to quit my job or fake my own death or... Breathe, Ethan interrupted. When Wednesday through, when Friday. Early morning Wednesday, back late Friday afternoon. Okay, Nina can stay with us. Claire froze. What? Caleb and I have plenty of space. She can take the guest room. I work from home most days anyway, so I can handle school pickup and homework and all that. It's not a problem. Ethan, that's too much to ask. 3 days is... You're not asking, I'm offering. His voice was calm, matter of fact. Claire, this is what people do. They help each other out. But 3 full days will be great. Caleb will be over the moon. Nina gets to have an extended sleepover. You get to do your work trip without stressing. Everybody wins. Claire sat down on her kitchen floor, her back against the cabinets, feeling something large and terrifying and wonderful shifting in her chest. I don't know what to say. Say yes. Say thank you. Say you'll text me when you land in Dallas. This is huge, Ethan. You understand that, right? I've never left Nina with anyone overnight except my parents, and that was years ago. I understand, and if you're not comfortable with it, we'll figure out something else. But Claire, I've got this. I've got her, I promise. Claire thought about Nina's face when she talked about Caleb, about the easy way Ethan communicated with her daughter, about the fact that he'd researched accessible Santa sessions and learned her coffee preferences and showed up with craft supplies during meltdowns. Okay, she heard herself say. Okay. Yes. Thank you. You're welcome, Sussy. Now text Nina and see how she feels about it. Claire did, expecting at least some hesitation from her daughter. Instead, Nina's response was immediate and enthusiastic. I can stay with Caleb? For 3 whole days? This is the best thing ever. You're sure, baby? You've never stayed away from home that long. Mama, I'll be with Caleb and Ethan. It'll be fine, better than fine. It'll be amazing. That night, Claire packed Nina's bag with meticulous care. 3 days of clothes, her favorite stuffed rabbit, the nightlight she couldn't sleep without, the special pillow that made bedtime easier. She wrote out detailed instructions for Ethan, Nina's routines, her food preferences, emergency contacts, the name of her interpreter at school. Tuesday evening, she drove Nina to Ethan's house, her anxiety ratcheting higher with each mile. Ethan lived in a comfortable 2-story in a quiet neighborhood, the kind of house that looked lived in and loved. Caleb met them at the door, practically vibrating with excitement. Nina, come see your room. Dad let me help decorate it. Nina looked at Claire for permission, received an encouraging nod, and followed Caleb up the stairs at a run. Their voices, Caleb's spoken words and Nina's occasional vocalizations, drifted down from the second floor. I put glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling, Caleb was explaining, just like you said you had in your room at home. And there's a bookshelf with some of my favorite books. And, oh, Dad got you this. Claire couldn't hear the rest, but Nina's delighted squeal said enough. He's been planning this all week, Ethan said, appearing beside her with 2 mugs of coffee. I had to physically restrain him from buying out the entire kids' section at Target. You didn't have to decorate. I wanted Nina to feel welcome. Like this is her space too, not just a guest room. Claire took the coffee, her hands trembling slightly. I wrote everything down, her routines, her medication schedule. She takes a daily vitamin and sometimes needs melatonin to sleep. And her school pickup is at 3:15, but her interpreter, Mrs. Patterson, always walks her out, so you'll know. Claire. Ethan's hand covered hers, warm and steady. I've got the instructions. I've got her emergency contacts. I've got this. You need to trust me. I'm trying. I've just never... I know, but Nina's going to be fine, more than fine. We're going to have a great time. The kids thundered back downstairs, Nina's face glowing. Mama, there are stars on the ceiling, and Ethan got me a book about a deaf girl who becomes a superhero. That's wonderful, baby. Claire pulled Nina close, breathing in her familiar scent. You're going to be good for Ethan, right? Follow the rules, do your homework. I promise. Don't worry, Mama. Remember to brush your teeth, and if you need anything, I'll tell Ethan, I know. Nina pulled back, studying her mother's face with that uncanny perception. You're scared. Claire couldn't lie to her. A little. I've never left you for this long. I'll be okay. Ethan knows signs and Caleb is my best friend and it's only 3 days. Nina signed with such confidence, such trust, that it simultaneously broke and healed something in Claire's heart. I know you'll be okay. I'm gonna miss you. I'll miss you too, but then you'll come back and I'll tell you all about everything we did. Claire hugged her again, longer this time, then forced herself to let go. I love you, baby girl. Love you too, Mama. Walking back to her car felt like wading through water. Every instinct screamed at her to turn around, to grab Nina and take her home, to cancel the trip and damn the consequences. But Ethan was standing on the porch with Nina and Caleb, and all three of them were waving, and Nina looked happy. She made it to the end of the block before she had to pull over, her hands shaking too badly to drive. Her phone rang almost immediately. You okay? Ethan's voice was gentle. How did you know? Because I know you, and I figured you'd make it about 2 blocks before the panic set in. Despite everything, Claire laughed, watery and weak. I'm being ridiculous. You're being a mom, it's different. She could hear him moving, probably stepping outside for privacy. Listen to me. Nina is safe. She's happy. She's with people who care about her. You're allowed to go on this work trip without carrying all the worry. I don't know how to not worry. Then worry a little bit, but also trust. Trust Nina. Trust me. Trust that we've built something real here. Claire pressed her hand to her chest, feeling her heartbeat slowly return to normal. When did you get so wise? Trial and error, lots and lots of error. He paused. Now go home, get some sleep, and text me when you land tomorrow. I'll send you updates, pictures, videos of the kids doing whatever chaos they inevitably create. Thank you, Ethan, for all of this. You're welcome. Now go. We've got dinner to make and homework to supervise. Wednesday morning arrived too quickly. Claire's flight was at 7, which meant leaving the house at 5. She'd barely slept, kept awake by scenarios of everything that could go wrong. But her phone was full of messages from Ethan, pictures of Nina and Caleb making pancakes for breakfast, a video of them practicing signs together, a text that simply said, "All good here, stop worrying." The flight to Dallas was uneventful. Claire tried to work, to review the Hutchinson files, but her mind kept drifting. Was Nina okay at school? Had Ethan remembered to pack her special lunch containers? What if there was an emergency? Her phone buzzed as they landed. A photo from Ethan. Nina and Caleb at the kitchen table, homework spread out between them, both giving thumbs up to the camera. The caption read, "Homework conquered, now making dinner. Nina says she misses you, but she's having fun." Claire stared at that photo for a long moment, something tight in her chest slowly loosening. They were okay. More than okay. The Dallas trip was intensive, 12-hour days of meetings and troubleshooting and damage control. But every evening she'd return to her hotel room to find messages waiting. Ethan sent updates throughout the day, never overwhelming but consistent enough that Claire felt connected. Pictures of the kids at the park. A video of Nina teaching Caleb a new sign. Messages about small victories and minor disasters. Wednesday evening. Made spaghetti. Caleb got sauce literally everywhere. Nina thought it was hilarious, currently giving him a cooking lesson in proper noodle handling. Thursday afternoon. School pickup went great. Mrs. Patterson says hi and that Nina was extra focused today. We're hitting the library after this. Nina wants books about space. Thursday night. Movie night. Nina picked an animated film about a girl who builds robots. Caleb is now convinced he wants to be an engineer. Your daughter is a good influence. Each message felt like a gift, proof that Nina was thriving, that Ethan was handling everything with the same care Claire would have. But more than that, proof that Claire could let go a little, could trust someone else with the most precious thing in her world. Friday afternoon, her flight landed 20 minutes early. Claire drove straight to Ethan's house, her heart hammering with anticipation. Before she could even knock, the door flew open and Nina launched herself into her mother's arms. "Mama, you're back!" Claire held her tight, checking her over with quick eyes. Same clothes from this morning, clean and whole. Hair neatly braided, Ethan's work probably. Face bright and happy, and completely untraumatized by the separation. "I missed you so much, baby. How was it?" "Amazing. We made cookies and went to the library, and Ethan taught me how to make scrambled eggs, and Caleb and I built a fort in the living room, and..." Nina's signs tumbled over each other in her excitement. "Sounds like you had a great time." "The best time, but I did miss you. A lot." Nina hugged her again, tighter this time. Ethan appeared in the doorway, Caleb beside him. "Hey, welcome back." Thank you, Claire said, the words inadequate for the enormity of what he'd done. Thank you for everything. It was our pleasure, honestly. Ethan smiled. Nina's a great house guest. Much better behaved than Caleb, significantly less likely to reorganize my kitchen at midnight. Hey, Caleb protested. That was one time, and I was making you breakfast. At 3 a.m., using every pot we own. Claire laughed, feeling lighter than she had in days. Sounds familiar. Nina once tried to bake me a birthday cake at 5 in the morning when she was 4. I woke up to flour absolutely everywhere. Did the cake turn out? Ethan asked. It was terrible. We ate it anyway. They stood there, the 4 of them, and Claire felt something click into place. This was what family felt like. Not the perfect Instagram version, but the real thing, messy and chaotic and built on trust and showing up. Can Nina stay for dinner? Caleb asked. Please, we were going to make tacos and she was going to teach me how to set the table with the signs and everything. Claire looked at Nina, who was practically vibrating with hope. If it's okay with Ethan? More than okay, Ethan said. I made enough for an army. Stay. They made tacos together, all 4 of them squeezed into Ethan's kitchen. Caleb narrated every step. Nina corrected his signs with patient amusement. Ethan orchestrated the chaos with the ease of long practice. Claire found herself relaxing, laughing at Caleb's dramatic reactions to spicy salsa, helping Nina reach the top shelf where the plates lived. After dinner, the kids convinced them to play board games. They sprawled across Ethan's living room floor. Nina and Caleb forming an alliance that absolutely dominated, their communication now seamless enough that they barely needed words. They're terrifyingly good at this, Ethan observed after their 3rd consecutive loss. We're unstoppable, Caleb crowed, then signed it to Nina, who signed back, like superheroes. It was after 9 when Claire finally insisted they needed to leave. Nina protested. Caleb looked devastated, but eventually goodbyes were said and promises were made for the next weekend. In the car, Nina was quiet for a long moment before signing, Mama, can I tell you something? Of course, baby, anything. I was scared at first, staying somewhere that wasn't home, without you. But Ethan made me feel safe. He knew all my routines without me having to explain. He signed goodnight stories just like you do. He even knew to leave the bathroom light on because I don't like the dark. Claire's vision blurred. He paid attention. He cares about us, Mama. About you, I can tell. I know he does. Do you love him? The question was simple, direct, achingly honest in the way only children could be. Claire thought about 3 days of updates, about decorated guest rooms and glow-in-the-dark stars, about someone who'd stepped up without hesitation when she needed help, about how Ethan made her feel seen and valued and less alone. I think I might, she signed carefully. Is that okay with you? It's more than okay. Nina's smile was radiant. It's perfect. That night, after Nina was asleep, Claire sent Ethan a text. Thank you doesn't even begin to cover it. What you did this week, taking care of Nina, sending me updates, making her feel safe and welcome, I can't even express what that meant to me. His response came quickly. You don't have to thank me. I wanted to do it. I wanted to show you that you don't have to carry everything alone anymore. I'm not used to that. Letting people help. I know. But maybe you could get used to it. Get used to us. Claire stared at that message for a long time, her heart full of fear and hope in equal measure. Then she typed, I'd like that. To get used to us. Yeah? Yeah. Good. Because I'm falling for you, Claire. Have been since that first night at the dinner, if I'm being honest. And I know that's terrifying and we're taking things slow and there are kids involved and a million complications. But I needed you to know. Claire's hands trembled as she typed her response. I'm falling for you too, and you're right. It's terrifying. But it's also the best thing that's happened to me in years. We're going to figure this out. Together. Together. The weeks after Dallas shifted something fundamental between them. Claire still maintained her own space, her own routines, but the boundaries became more permeable. Ethan had a key to her house for emergencies. She had his garage code. The kids developed elaborate systems for splitting their time between both homes. November gave way to December, and with it came the approach of the holidays. Claire had always kept Christmas small and quiet, just her and Nina, a modest tree, simple traditions. But this year felt different. "What are your plans for Christmas?" Ethan asked one evening after the kids had gone to bed. At his house this time, both children crashed in Caleb's room after an intense Pokemon tournament. "Same as always, low-key. Nina and I usually do Christmas Eve together, make hot chocolate, watch movies. Christmas morning presents, then a nice breakfast." Claire paused. "What about you and Caleb?" "Similar, though Caleb has started lobbying for us to do Christmas with you guys." "Nina, too. She asked me 3 times this week if we could spend Christmas together. What do you think?" Ethan's tone was careful, leaving room for Claire to decline. Claire thought about it. The 4 of them. A real family Christmas, sharing traditions and making new ones. The idea was overwhelming and perfect in equal measure. "I think that sounds really nice," she said softly. "If you're sure." "I'm sure. More than sure." Ethan pulled her closer on the couch, and Claire let herself lean into his warmth. "We could do Christmas Eve at your place, Christmas morning at mine. Split it up so the kids get the full experience? They'd love that." "What about the company Christmas dinner?" Ethan asked. "The one coming up next week?" Claire groaned. "I'd almost forgotten about it. I was planning to skip it this year." "Bring Nina again. Bring both kids. Make it a group outing." "You really want to sit through 3 hours of awkward corporate networking with 2 energetic children?" "I really want to sit through it with you. The kids are just a bonus." Ethan smiled. "Besides, it's where we met. Seems fitting to go back." The following Saturday, Claire took Nina shopping for a dress for the dinner. They were browsing through the racks when Nina stopped, her hand on a deep green velvet dress, similar to the one she'd worn last year. "This one, Mama. It's perfect." "You had a green dress last year, sweetie. Don't you want a different color?" "No, green, like last year, because that's when we met Ethan and Caleb. It's a good luck color." Claire's throat tightened. "Okay, baby, green it is." They found a matching tie for Caleb, Nina's idea, delivered with such earnest excitement that Claire couldn't refuse. She also bought a new dress for herself, something burgundy and elegant that Ethan would probably like. The night of the dinner arrived with fresh snow falling. The world turned soft and white. Ethan picked them up, Caleb already wearing his new green tie and practically bouncing with excitement. "We match," he announced to Nina the moment they got in the car. "We're like a team." "A Christmas team," Nina agreed, beaming. The ballroom was just as Claire remembered. Chandeliers, jazz quartet, executives networking over expensive wine. But walking in this time felt entirely different. She wasn't alone, wasn't bracing herself against the inevitable isolation. She had Ethan beside her, their hands linked, had both kids running ahead, already planning their evening. "Table for 4?" Ethan asked, gesturing to their assigned seats. "Perfect." They settled in, and Claire noticed the differences immediately. People smiled at them, genuine smiles, not the polite dismissals from last year. Coworkers who'd barely acknowledged Nina before now greeted her directly, some even attempting basic signs. The woman from HR made a point of coming over to compliment both children on their outfits. "Things have changed," Claire murmured to Ethan. "You've changed," he corrected gently. "You're not trying to be invisible anymore." And people noticed that. Halfway through dinner, Douglas Reeves stopped by their table. Claire tensed automatically, but his expression was friendlier than she'd ever seen it. "Claire, good to see you brought family this year." He nodded at Ethan. "And you must be the infamous boyfriend. Heard you took care of her daughter during the Dallas trip." "Word travels fast," Ethan said pleasantly. "Good work in Dallas, by the way," Douglas continued, addressing Claire. "The Hutchinson team was impressed. We're looking at expanding your role. More client-facing work, possible promotion to senior director." Claire's mouth fell open slightly. "Really?" "Really. You've proven you can handle the pressure. We'll talk specifics in January." Douglas smiled at Nina. "And young lady, I understand you're quite the artist. My assistant mentioned seeing some of your drawings." Nina looked at Claire for translation, and Claire signed the gist of it. Nina's face lit up and she signed back, which Claire voiced. She says thank you, and yes, she loves to draw. "Excellent. My daughter's looking for a Christmas gift for her niece. Any recommendations?" Nina launched into an enthusiastic explanation about the best art supplies for kids, Claire translating, Douglas actually listening and taking mental notes. When he left, Claire sat back in her chair, slightly stunned. "Did that just happen?" she asked Ethan. "It did. You impressed them, made yourself indispensable. I almost didn't go to Dallas, almost canceled the whole thing because I couldn't figure out childcare. But you didn't. You took the leap, asked for help, and look what happened." Claire looked around the ballroom, at Nina chattering with Caleb, at coworkers who actually saw her now, at Ethan beside her, steady and sure. A year ago she'd been so alone, so invisible. Now she was here with her family, being recognized for her work, building something real and lasting. "Thank you," she said to Ethan, her voice thick with emotion, "for showing up, for staying, for making me believe this was possible." "You don't have to thank me for falling in love with you," Ethan said simply. "It's the easiest thing I've ever done." Claire's breath caught. "You love me?" "I love you. I love Nina. I love what we're building together." He squeezed her hand. "I know it's soon, and I know you're probably going to panic a little, but I needed you to know." "I'm not panicking," Claire said, surprising herself. I love you too. I think I have for weeks, but I was too scared to say it." Ethan's smile could have lit up the entire ballroom. "Yeah?" "Yeah." They sat there, hands linked, while the dinner continued around them. The kids were oblivious to the monumental declaration, too absorbed in their own world. But Claire felt it settling into her bones. This new reality where she wasn't alone, where love was possible, where family meant more than just biology. Later, when the jazz quartet took a break and recorded music filled the ballroom, Ethan stood and offered his hand. "Dance with me?" "I'm not much of a dancer. Neither am I. We'll be terrible together." Claire laughed and let him pull her onto the small dance floor. They swayed to the music, pressed close, while around them other couples did the same. Nina and Caleb had left their table, gone to investigate the dessert display with strict instructions to stay visible. "This is nice," Claire murmured against Ethan's shoulder. "It is, though I prefer the version where we're not being watched by your entire company. We could leave early. The kids would riot." "True," Claire pulled back slightly to look at him. "Ethan? I'm still scared sometimes, that this is too good to be real, that something's going to go wrong. I know, but we'll handle it. Whatever comes, we'll handle it together. Together." They stayed until the end, the kids' energy finally flagging around 9:30. Walking out into the snowy parking lot, Caleb and Nina were holding hands, both yawning, still chattering about the chocolate fountain they'd discovered near the desserts. "Best Christmas dinner ever," Nina signed sleepily from the back seat. "Better than last year?" Claire asked. "So much better. Last year we didn't have Caleb and Ethan." "Last year we didn't have you guys either," Caleb added, his voice already drowsy. "This year is way better." Ethan caught Claire's eye in the rearview mirror, his expression soft with affection. This messy, imperfect, beautiful thing they'd built was real, was worth every moment of fear and vulnerability, was worth choosing over and over again. As they drove through the snowy streets toward home, Claire let herself believe it fully. The walls were gone. The isolation was over. In their place was something infinitely better: connection, love, the promise of a future built together. And for the first time in 7 long years, Claire Monroe felt like she was exactly where she belonged. Christmas Eve arrived with the kind of perfect snowfall that belonged in movies, fat flakes drifting down in lazy spirals, coating everything in pristine white. Claire stood at her kitchen window watching it accumulate, her heart doing that familiar flip between joy and terror that seemed to define her life these days. Tonight would be their first Christmas together. All 4 of them, officially a unit, making traditions that would hopefully last years. The thought was exhilarating and terrifying in equal measure. "Mama, they're here!" Nina's shout, actual vocalization, rare and precious, came from the living room where she'd been stationed by the window for the past 20 minutes, watching for Ethan's car. Claire wiped her hands on her apron, took a steadying breath, and went to open the door. Ethan stood on her porch holding a casserole dish, snowflakes caught in his hair, his smile warm enough to melt the winter chill. Caleb was right behind him, arms full of wrapped presents, his face bright with excitement. "Merry Christmas Eve," Ethan said, leaning in to kiss her cheek. The casual intimacy of it still made Claire's stomach flip. "Merry Christmas Eve! Come in before you freeze!" The evening unfolded with surprising ease. They made dinner together, Ethan's famous lasagna paired with Claire's garlic bread, the kids setting the table with elaborate care, arranging napkins and silverware like it was an art form. Over dinner, they shared stories, the conversation flowing between spoken words and signs, everyone code-switching naturally now. "Remember last year?" Caleb asked Nina through a mouthful of lasagna. "When we first met at the boring dinner?" "It wasn't boring," Nina signed back, grinning. "That's when I got my best friend." "And when Dad got his girlfriend." Caleb signed the last word carefully, having practiced it specifically for this moment. Claire felt heat rise to her cheeks. "Caleb, what?" "It's true. Dad said you guys are together. That makes you his girlfriend." Ethan was trying very hard not to laugh. "Subtle, bud. Real subtle." After dinner, they moved to the living room where Claire's modest tree stood in the corner, its lights twinkling softly. Nina had insisted on decorating it exactly the same as last year, right down to the placement of her favorite ornaments. The snowflake from the Winter Festival hung in a place of honor, catching the light. "Hot chocolate time?" Ethan asked, already heading toward the kitchen. "With marshmallows!" both kids chorused. They settled on the couch with their mugs, the kids on the floor in front of the tree, adults on the couch close enough that their shoulders touched. Claire had queued up a playlist of instrumental Christmas music, soft and unobtrusive, creating ambiance without overwhelming. "Can we open one present tonight?" Caleb asked, the question clearly pre-rehearsed. "Just one? It's tradition." "Since when?" Ethan asked, amused. "Since right now. I'm starting a tradition." Nina looked at Claire hopefully. "Can we, Mama?" Claire glanced at Ethan, who shrugged with a smile. "Why not? One present each." The kids dove under the tree, searching through packages with barely contained glee. Nina selected a medium-sized box wrapped in silver paper, while Caleb chose something flat and rectangular. "At the same time," Nina insisted, and they tore into their presents in unison. Caleb's gift was a book, a graphic novel about deaf superheroes that he'd apparently been wanting forever. "This is so cool! Thank you!" Nina's was a set of art supplies, professional-grade colored pencils, and a sketchbook with thick, textured paper. Her face lit up like the tree behind her. "These are perfect, Mama. Perfect." "Actually," Claire signed, "those are from Ethan and Caleb." Nina's eyes went wide. She looked at Ethan, then launched herself at him in an enthusiastic hug that nearly knocked his hot chocolate over. "Thank you, thank you, thank you!" Ethan caught her easily, signing one-handed. "You're very welcome. Caleb helped pick them out." "I told Dad you liked the fancy pencils," Caleb added proudly. "The ones with all the colors." They spent the next hour just talking, sharing memories of past Christmases. Ethan told stories about Rachel's childhood, about sign language chaos and Christmas pageants where half the family performed in ASL. Claire shared quieter memories, just her and Nina, creating their own small traditions, making the best of their isolation. "It's different this year," Nina signed suddenly, her expression thoughtful. "Better different, not just me and Mama anymore." "Is that okay?" Ethan asked gently, "having us here?" "It's more than okay. It's what I wished for. Remember? When I told Santa I wanted Mama to be happy?" Claire's throat tightened. She thought Nina had forgotten that conversation, but apparently her daughter remembered every word. "I'm very happy, baby," Claire signed, meaning it completely. "Happier than I've been in a long time." "Because of Ethan?" "Because of all of this. You, me, Ethan, Caleb, all of us together." Nina seemed satisfied with that answer. She cuddled up next to Claire on the couch, her head resting against her mother's shoulder, while Caleb did the same with Ethan. They sat like that for a while, watching the tree lights blur and refocus, the warmth of the moment settling around them like a blanket. Around 9 o'clock, Caleb's eyes started drooping. Nina was fighting sleep, determined not to miss anything, but losing the battle. "We should probably head out," Ethan said reluctantly. "Let these two get some sleep before Santa comes." "Or," Claire heard herself say, surprising even herself, "you could stay, both of you. I have the guest room. and there's a pull-out couch. The kids could have a sleepover, wake up together tomorrow. Ethan's expression shifted, something warm and hopeful flickering across his features. You're sure? I'm sure. I want you to stay. The kids perked up immediately, exhaustion forgotten in the face of this exciting development. Really? Caleb asked, already bouncing. We can have a sleepover on Christmas Eve? Really? Claire confirmed. Getting the kids settled took another hour, finding extra blankets, brushing teeth, the elaborate bedtime routine that Nina required and that Caleb decided to adopt for solidarity. Ethan helped orchestrate it all with practiced ease, knowing exactly when to redirect and when to let them wind down naturally. Finally, both children were tucked into Nina's room, Caleb on an air mattress on the floor, Nina in her own bed, both of them whispering and giggling in the dark. Lights out in 10 minutes, Ethan signed from the doorway, and both kids groaned but agreed. Back downstairs, Claire poured 2 glasses of wine and joined Ethan on the couch. The house was quiet now, peaceful, the tree lights casting soft shadows across the walls. This is nice, Ethan said, pulling her close. All of us under one roof. It is. Terrifying, but nice. Still scared? Always, Claire admitted. But less than before. You've taught me that scared doesn't mean impossible. You've taught me plenty too, like how strong someone can be when they have to carry everything alone, and how beautiful it is when they finally don't have to anymore. Claire turned to look at him, this man who'd walked into her life barely 2 months ago and changed everything. I love you. I know I said it before, but I need you to know I mean it. Completely. I know you do, and I love you. I love Nina. I love what we're building here. It's fast, Claire said. 2 months it's not very long. Does it feel too fast? Claire considered this, really thought about it. 2 months by the calendar, but it felt like so much more. Like they'd been building toward this for years instead of weeks. Like this was exactly where they were supposed to be. No, she said finally. It feels exactly right. Ethan's kiss was soft, sweet, full of promise. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. I have something for you. Can I give it to you now? Or do you want to wait until morning? Now, definitely now. He pulled a small wrapped box from his jacket pocket, handed it to her with slightly trembling fingers. Claire unwrapped it carefully to find a velvet jewelry box. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet with 3 charms, the letters C, N, and E in sign language hand shapes. It's us, Ethan explained softly. You, me, and our kids. Thought you might like something to remind you that you're not alone anymore. Claire's vision blurred with tears. She held out her wrist wordlessly, let him fasten the bracelet, watched the charms catch the light. It's perfect. I love it. I have one more thing. Well, kind of. It's more of a question. Claire's heart rate picked up. Okay. Ethan took both her hands in his expression serious now. I know it's soon. I know we're still figuring things out. But Claire, I can't imagine my life without you and Nina in it anymore. I don't want to imagine it. So I'm asking, not for right now, but for someday, would you consider making this permanent, moving in together, combining our families officially, building a real future together? Claire's breath caught. This was huge, monumental, the kind of commitment that should have sent her running for the hills. But instead, she felt only certainty settling into her bones. Yes, she said, the word coming easily. Not right now. Nina needs time to adjust, and we should probably date longer than 2 months before cohabitating. But yes. Someday. Absolutely yes. Ethan's smile was brilliant, relieved, joyful. He pulled her close and kissed her properly this time, deep and promising, full of all the tomorrows they were choosing together. They stayed up late talking, making plans. Nothing concrete, just dreams and possibilities, and the outline of a shared future. They'd take it slow, let the kids adjust, make sure Nina felt secure through every transition. But the destination was clear now, the path forward illuminated. Christmas morning dawned bright and clear, the snow from the night before creating a winter wonderland outside. Claire woke to the sound of children's laughter drifting up from downstairs, followed by Ethan's voice gently reminding them to let the adults sleep a little longer. She found them all in the kitchen, Ethan making pancakes, both kids helping in ways that mostly involved creating more mess than assistance. Nina's face was bright with joy. Caleb was covered in flour. And Ethan looked completely in his element, managing the chaos. "Merry Christmas, Mama," Nina signed, rushing over for a hug. "Merry Christmas, baby girl." They ate breakfast together, the kids practically vibrating with excitement about presents. The unwrapping was chaotic and wonderful, paper flying everywhere, exclamations of delight, both children showing off their gifts to each other with elaborate demonstrations. Claire had gotten Caleb a Pokemon card collection he'd been wanting, and his reaction was worth every penny. Ethan had gotten Nina a signing dictionary and a subscription to a deaf children's book club, thoughtful gifts that showed how much attention he paid. But the real surprise came when Nina handed Claire a package wrapped in somewhat crooked paper, clearly wrapped by a 7-year-old. "I made this," Nina signed proudly, "with Caleb's help." Inside was a photo frame, hand-painted with stars and snowflakes. The photo was from the Winter Festival, all 4 of them in front of the Christmas tree, the kids in the middle, adults on either side, everyone smiling. Below it, Nina had carefully written in her best handwriting, "My family, Christmas 2025. Claire couldn't speak for a moment, couldn't sign, could only hold her daughter close and cry into her hair. "Happy tears, right, Mama?" Nina asked anxiously. "The happiest tears. This is the most beautiful gift anyone's ever given me." After presents, they went to Ethan's house for the second half of Christmas. Caleb gave Nina a grand tour, showing her his room, his favorite spots, pointing out where she'd stay when they had sleepovers. The casualness of it, the assumption that this would be ongoing, permanent, made Claire's heart swell. They spent the afternoon just being together, playing games, watching movies, making dinner as a group. The kids taught each other new signs and Pokemon moves respectively, their friendship deepening with every shared moment. That evening, after the kids had crashed in Caleb's room for another impromptu sleepover, Claire and Ethan stood in his kitchen doing dishes together. "So," Ethan said casually, "I've been thinking about the logistics of eventually combining households." "Already planning?" Claire teased, but she was interested. "Just preliminary thoughts. This house has 4 bedrooms, plenty of space for everyone, good school district. Your work is only 15 minutes away. It makes sense." "You've really thought about this." "I think about it constantly," Ethan admitted, "about waking up with you every morning, about the kids growing up together, about building something lasting." "I think about it too," Claire said softly, "about Nina having a real family, not just me struggling to be enough." "Claire," Ethan turned her to face him, his hands gentle on her shoulders. "You've always been enough, more than enough. But you shouldn't have to do it alone anymore." "I know, I'm starting to really believe that." They finished the dishes in comfortable silence, then settled on the couch to talk about practicalities. They'd wait until spring to make any big changes, let the kids finish the school year in their current routines. But come summer, they'd start the transition, combining households gradually, letting Nina adjust at her own pace. "What about work?" Claire asked. "My promotion, if I get it, will mean longer hours sometimes." "We'll figure it out. That's what partners do." "Partners," Claire repeated, testing the word. "I like that." "Me too."